My name's Adrian Nelson and I'm your MC for today. We would firstly like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri and the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation and also pay our respects to elders past, present and future, and extend that respect to all Indigenous Australians present today. Welcome to our hybrid meeting to all those online and also to all those in the room. Technology is not being our friend completely today, so please be patient with some of that. Thanks to today will be given by Peter Dakin, followed by the loyal toast presented by President Reg. Please ensure your glass is charged.
Thank you, Adrian, and good afternoon, Rotarians and guests here at the Sofitel and online. And what a great thrill to see so many people together again. It really is. In giving the reflection, today we recognise an outstanding person aged 60 years or over who has made a positive difference to the lives of older people with the presentation of our annual Seniors Award. Senior citizens are variably described as elderly or retired persons in the age range of 65 to 75 years. Our club is, of course, well represented in this regard. And on reflection, we do in fact have many active members well beyond these years who make a wonderful contribution to the club and the community. We're of course actively pursuing younger members with some success, ensuring a good cross-section and succession pipeline for the club. With the ageing population, many people are deferring their retirement from the workforce, adopting for a portfolio career, including part-time work and volunteering. To that end, we should not lose sight of encouraging people of more mature years to be part of Rotary, enjoying fun and fellowship and the opportunity to participate in a range of club projects. Acknowledging the huge labour shortages being faced around Australia, it's going to be critical that our senior people remain active in the workforce. For example, I have an ASX listed client that employs in excess of 50,000 people nationally, and they are facing potential labour shortages of 30% over the next 2 to 3 years. And they are making every effort to retain employees transitioning to retirement for as long as possible. And that'll be down to 4 and 3 days a week. Without being political this week, and knowing our guest speaker today is a leading journalist, I am supportive of the lobbying by National Seniors Australia, who have 130,000 members. Their recent survey indicated 20% of pensioners who have retired would keep working if their earnings were not impacted by the current tax legislation. I reiterate that you should give serious consideration to friends, family, and former colleagues who could benefit greatly from joining Rotary and our particular club. Over to you, President Reg.
Thanks very much, Peter, and I share your joy at such a large crowd today. Rotarians and guests, a toast to Australia and Rotary International. Australia, Rotary International. Thank you, and please be seated. Now we're essentially now going to break for lunch. Those of you online, you'll be invited into a chat room where you can enjoy some fellowship. You may even want to have a bite to eat yourself. We'll be reconvening at around 1:10 p.m. 1:10 this afternoon. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy. Members, visitors and guests, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to our club's 41st meeting of this Rotary year and our 4,937th club meeting in our 101-year history. It's wonderful to see you all here, and especially to our members and friends online. Welcome. What a great honour it is to have Lisa Miller in the room, journalist, author and guest speaker today. Lisa will be speaking on Daring to Fly and will be further introduced later in our program by Chair of the Day, past President Robert Fisher. In the meantime, please join me in making both welcome. We have a few guests of the club present, and I'm going to take you through those. Today, we also present our annual Seniors Award. Our 2022 recipient is Kathy Roth. Kathy will be more formally introduced a little later by Chris Soteropoulos, Chair of the Health and Ageing Committee, and is accompanied by her husband, John, and her nominator, past District Governor Murray Verso. Also joining us today, we have Peter Brown from the Rotary Club of Caboolture. And if you were observant when you walked through the driveway, you would have noticed a pretty interesting car bash machine that had Rotary labels all over it. Peter's going to tell us a little bit about that R100 project shortly. And our final guest we have today is a new member, Mike Al-Babari, and Mike will be inducted into the club shortly. Would you please acknowledge and welcome all these guests to our club? We also have quite a few visiting guests, Rotarians and guests of members and visitors, both online and in person. I invite you and your host to stand when your name is called and ask that you please remain standing to enable the club to welcome you in a collective manner when we've completed the list. Visiting our club as guests of Rotarians today, we have Bryony Bottarelli, who's a guest of Bruce Davidson. I think Bryony is online. Sandy Addison, guest of Peter Addison. Jean Burgess, a guest of Bob Burgess. Myra Fisher, a guest of Robert Fisher. Manuel Felipe Marquez, guest of Robert Fisher. Xavier Corbell, who is a guest of John Shaw, as is Carolee Shaw, a guest of John's. Visiting Australian Rotarians, we have Jane Pennington, current District Secretary, and Murray Verso from Williamstown, past District Governor, as well, of course, of Peter Brown, who I've already mentioned. Please join me in making all these guests most welcome. Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. And now for some club business. Would Mike Al-Babari come forward for induction into membership of the club? And can I also call on Mike's sponsor, past President Austin Burley, to join us as well to introduce Mike to the club.
President Reg, it is with much pleasure that I introduce membership to the club, Mike Al-Babari. Mike holds the position currently as Director of Finance at Agile Financial Services and will hold the classification of finance accounting in the club. He will be a member of the Bourne Group and will be known in the club as Mike.
Mike Al-Babari, we welcome you as a member of the Rotary Club of Melbourne. Today, you enter an organisation with more than 1.2 million members in over 35,000 clubs in more than 200 countries, truly embracing the internationality of Rotary. We believe that you have the personal and professional qualities that will ensure the principles of Rotary will be safe in your keeping. The Rotary Badge, which you will receive shortly, and I hope will wear with pride, indicates your commitment to the object of Rotary to which we all aspire, to encourage the ideal of service above self. We expect you will become an ambassador from us into the community in which we and you live, and we ask that you convey Rotary's aims in all that you do. We look forward to your pursuing with us great work of Rotary. So with this expectation, I offer you the right hand of fellowship and ask that members rise to join me in welcoming your membership of our club. Welcome, Mike. Now, Mike, would you like to say a few words in response? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. First of all, hello, everyone. First of all, thank you. And I really appreciate the warm introduction. Frankly, it's the first time for me to be in this situation. I am Mike. I have around 20 years experience in finance and accounting. I come from Jordan last year. I think why Rotaries, just because of how much people here is warm, which will help me to be part of the community for me and my family. And I hope I will help Rotary to achieve the targets or be productive in the community. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike. And now to our Seniors Award. I invite Chris Soteropoulos, Chair of the Club's Health and Ageing Committee, to introduce the awardee for 2021-22. Over to you, Chris.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to see everyone is real and human and not necessarily what we see behind the screen. One of the club's annual awards is the Service to Seniors Award, made to a person whose outstanding service for seniors in a voluntary capacity is judged to have made a positive difference to the lives of seniors. Once again, this year, we are thrilled with the appointment or the awardee. Let me now read the citation for the award to Ms. Kathy Roth, OAM. Kathy Roth has held senior management positions in diverse industries, including medical, hospitality, major events industries, and in executive mentoring. Kathy's original tertiary qualifications were in diagnostic radiography and subsequently in business and management. Her numerous leadership roles include having been the first female president of the Geelong Chamber of Commerce and the first female president of a Rotary Club in the ANZO region. She was governor of Rotary District 9780 in 2004-05. When Kathy's husband, John, a general surgeon, who is with us today, was diagnosed with dementia and cut off from his professional colleagues and career, it became her first magnificent obsession, as she described it to the Geelong Advertiser, to establish a support group to ensure that persons from a high-powered work environment with early stages of dementia could continue to maintain dignity and respect through active participation and interaction within a socially and intellectually stimulating environment. With Kathy's extensive network of contacts and the support of the Victorian Chamber of Commerce and Dementia Australia, PALS, Professionals with Alzheimer's and Related Diseases, was formed in 2016. There are now PALS groups in Geelong, Melbourne, Ballarat, Sydney, Canberra, Perth, Batemans Bay, shortly in Brisbane and the UK. You can see where this is going. Each group is coordinated by a facilitator and meets bi-monthly with a corporate style speaker who has been briefed on the need for multi-sensory inputs and repetition of key points. So you can see how it's highly focused. Each group is autonomous and reports annually to the PALS board, and Kathy is the national chair of the PALS board. Kathy's community contributions have been acknowledged by the award of the Medal of the Order of Australia, by her selection as state finalist in the Telstra Businesswoman of the Year Awards, and through a number of Business and Rotary Awards. Kathy meets all criteria for the club's Service to Seniors Award and is a very worthy winner. Thank you. I will now pass on to Reg to present the award.
Kathy, can I invite you to join me on the podium? I think it's very important to have you here while I say a few words. And welcome. On behalf, Kathy, on behalf of the members of the Rotary Club of Melbourne, I have great pleasure in awarding you the club's Seniors Award for 21-22, which is very much deserved. Thank you so much, Kathy. And I think there's a plaque, which I should have had in my possession when I started saying that, but please accept this on our behalf with enormous appreciation of your community efforts. Let's grab a picture or two, and then I'll ask you to respond for a minute or two. Excellent. Over to you, Kathy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's incredibly humbling having a passion acknowledged. And the passion is that we, as those who serve humanity, are called on to sometimes apply that passion in an unexpected area. And with the diagnosis of my husband with dementia, it galvanized that Rotary germ that we are instilled with in our induction to make a difference. There are people every day being diagnosed with dementia, people sitting in trains, sitting in cafes, people who are desperate for someone to say, I still see the person you are. I still see what you have contributed to society. And through PALS, we are able to allow that dignity, that self-respect, and to activate those incredible brains to keep working that much longer. So if you know of anyone who has been diagnosed at early stage dementia, please tell them it's not lost hope. It is the start of a new journey with new friends, recognizing who you are and what you have been. Thank you.
All I can say is what an inspiration. Thank you so much, Kathy. And thank you, Chris, for your words in reading the citation. Okay, as you can see, we've got a packed agenda today. And my next agenda item is to alert you that we have a visitor with a vehicle downstairs, which you're more than welcome to check out on the way out if you go that way. It's Peter Brown from the Rotary Club of Caboolture. And rather than me putting words into Peter's mouth, I'm going to ask him to tell us a little bit about why he's visiting the club today and the nature of the project that has triggered that. And I might also say, for any past presidents in the room, please seek Peter out. He's got a copy of our history, and he'd like past presidents to autograph the book for him. So he's already been busy, but I'm sure there are others who will be able to sign. So Peter, please join me on the podium for a couple of minutes of your story. Thank you.
Right, I'm very keen to hear your guest speaker. So this will be like the elevator version. It came about the fact that we had a visit, as you normally do, guest speakers, Variety Fund of Children's Fund of Australia. They talked to us about the Variety Bash, and we had a few bash people, and we were invited to participate if we wished to. So I did, went on a bash. I came back to my club and said, this is an association I think has similar values to Rotary, and I'd like to support it. We did by buying it. I bought a car and had it made bash ready. So that's all armor plated and as much work as I could get done on it to go on a bash. Unfortunately, the following year, we had COVID, bash was cancelled. So what do we do? What do we do with this car? We can't let it sit here for 12 months in the garage. Heard about the R100 scheme, promoting Rotary. I decided to take time off work and go for a quick trip around Australia. So that was January 21. So I'm finally here, nearing the end of the trip. I did try to get here a couple of times and got turned around because of lockdowns. So from here, I go to Tasmania, back through Canberra, and the trip's over in a period of about 18 months instead of 3. So it's just a case of, we have a brochure. I have some brochures up the top there. I thank you very much for your club's quick and speedy response, your speedy response to the sponsorship program. All the signs on the car that are written have been paid for by those Rotary clubs at different financial levels. And your club was about the second one to contribute. And it was really well received because you're the first club in Australia and why.
And we published the bulletin for next week. We'll have a video from Peter. He was hoping to be able to show it today, but technical issues have gotten in the way. So thanks very much, Peter, and thank you for the opportunity, and thank you particularly for acknowledging the contribution of clubs to this project. And I might say I'm in great admiration of your persistence. A lot of people would have thrown in the towel. You didn't. Thanks, mate. That's great. Okay, I'd now like to just make a few. This is going to be very quick because we all want to maximise the time with Lisa. The first thing I want to celebrate is that we have Chris Rod, who's had a pretty rough year, who's up and well and has joined us today. It's his 5th anniversary of membership. It's great to have you in the room, Chris. Congratulations. A quick word of thanks to the 70 or so members and guests that joined us for our fellowship event last Thursday night at the Crudo Warehouse restaurant. Thank you particularly to Kaz Burr, who was the key organiser of this event. It was fantastic and really perfectly timed and perfectly formatted. And thanks to everyone who joined in the raffle for a donated bottle of Grange Hermitage 2003. That cleared $2,000 in contribution to the Community Welfare Committee, which will help overcome some of the foregone raffle revenue for the last 12 months. A quick reminder that the annual appeal to our membership for contributions to our own Rotary, our own foundations is out and about. Please pay it some personal attention, and we'd love to see your generous donations soon. A couple of things I want to make a very quick reference to. Firstly, tomorrow night, I think there was scheduled at the launch of the Rotary Carbon Calculator. I'm not quite sure, Gary, whether that is actually proceeding, but keep your eye out for that. Gary Fowler has played an enormous role in setting up a carbon calculator, which helps organisations like Rotary clubs calculate their carbon contribution from their activities. And as you can see there, the timing is perfect, Joe. Thank you. The food waste event, which we've got coming up on the 2nd of June, that's only 2 weeks away. And we're really pushing hard to get this to iconic levels in terms of a club event, because this is our first. We'll be making an award to an amazing individual for environmental sustainability. That will be our 2nd award. But there's also an absolutely incredible panel of speakers who I think you'll get a lot from tuning in to see. So please join us on Thursday the 2nd. You can book your tickets on our Humanitix account as we speak. And without further ado, I'm going to invite Chair of the day, Robert Fisher, to come to the podium to introduce Lisa, our guest speaker. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, President Reg. A couple of weeks ago, an announcement went out that ABC News Breakfast program had outpaced a rival in Channel 9 in terms of audience participation. In my view, in no small measure, This was down to the contributions of Lisa Miller, our guest speaker today. Lisa is a highly experienced radio and television journalist, having headed ABC's bureau in London and before that in Washington. More recently, she has turned her hand to writing and has produced an autobiography, which is fascinating and full of a number of surprises, some of which I hope she will cover in her talk today. So without any further ado, it's my great pleasure, Rotarians and guests, to introduce Lisa Miller.
Thank you so much, everyone, for having me here. Am I using my microphone technique well enough for you all? You can hear me? Okay, that's good. Because not only have I been up since 3 o'clock in the morning, but Robert also gave me a glass of white wine. So I think this is dangerous territory, all right? I'm being told that this speech is recorded. Okay, so I will behave myself, but I'm so grateful to be here. I really appreciate the invitation. And I do have a connection with Rotary. My big brother, Robert, has been a Rotarian for 30 years in Samford Valley. So Peter, when you said that you were Caboolture, I thought you might even know Bob Miller from up around there. Bob is 20 years older than me. We have a very big family. There's 5 of us, and that is part of the story of my book, Daring to Fly, which I will speak about. But you know, Robert's old enough to be my father, really, but whenever I would come home from a posting, whether it was from Washington or London, I might have come off covering the Paris terrorist attacks. I might have come straight from a presidential campaign in America, and Robert would say, "So can I get you for a fundraiser for Rotary?" And I'd say, okay. And so he'd line up these speeches for me. So I probably did about 3 Rotary speeches to help raise money. Robert's only regret about it was after they'd managed to sell all the tickets in 2 hours the first time, he looked at his little kid sister and said, "Oh, I should have been charging everyone more." It is wonderful to see you all in the room here, because I know that all of us went through COVID in a different way. I ended up still having to go into the office every morning, but my job changed in a way that I was not anticipating when I started as a young cadet on the Gympie Times when I was just 18 years old. Gympie is a town about 2 hours northwest of Brisbane. And it was the scene of my, first great journalistic exploits. In fact, my very first story, of which I was very proud, was a head lice outbreak in Gympie's primary schools. When the paper came out and I picked up this copy, and I had dreamed of being a journalist since I was 7 years old. I used to interview members of my family. We've still got a tape recording of me questioning my dad, who went through life of working for the Postmaster General. He fought in World War II. He was part of the secret wireless operators that Douglas MacArthur had taken on board. And he did things that none of us could ever know about. He became a dairy farmer. And then he became a politician. He went into federal politics. And this cassette tape that we located when I was in the process of writing this book is my father being interviewed by 10-year-old Lisa. And I've sung the ABC News theme. I've gone, da, 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 da. And I introduce him. And then I ask him to explain the Moscow Olympics boycott. I mean, hello, what was going on in my head? So Dad, you can hear his voice, and my darling dad passed away a few years ago at the age of 93. My darling dad is explaining to me very patiently the geopolitical situation. And then my little voice says, "Okay, Clary, we'll have to wrap it up there. Thank you." So I've been wrapping up people since I was 10 years old. But so here, you know, I'm in Gympie and I get my first story. I pick up the paper and it says, you know, head lice explosion by Lisa Miller. And my first thought was, for the rest of my career, I will always remember that head lice was the first story I ever got a byline on. When I say that COVID changed the way my work operated, as you are doing with being able to welcome people into this room on Zoom, we were able to get interviews that I never anticipated we would get. A lot of them really critical, interesting people in regional Australia. And the fact that we were able to zoom in and talk to people in Julia Creek or wherever it might be that we hadn't been able to before. But I think I hit an all-time high when on a Friday night, I went home, it was about 6:30 p.m. I put on my tracksuit pants, but I put a nice top on up top, and I put a bit of lipstick on. And then I clicked on the button and I zoomed in to interview Daniel Craig, James Bond. And I just thought, this is a pinch me moment. I am in my home in my tracksuit pants interviewing Daniel Craig. There are snippets of silver linings. I am constantly, I don't know where it came from, but I've been able to, over the years of my career, which has now lasted 32, 33 years, and hopefully a few more years, I've been able to find the joy when I have been confronted with some pretty dramatic events and stories that I've had to cover. One of the defining moments of my life, and the book Daring to Fly has a few different elements to it. One of the defining moments was when I was a young reporter in North Queensland, and we had to do a very quick trip from Townsville down to one of the coal mines and to film something and then turn around and go back. And the weather had deteriorated, and on the trip back to Townsville was my cameraman and I and the pilot in this 6-seater. And the rain was smashing against the windows, and I was in the back with my headphones on, perfectly happy. And I was perfectly happy because one of the dreams that my father had had throughout his entire life had been to become a pilot. And when he was in his early 40s and on a farm with my mum and my 4 siblings in Kilkeven, which is an even tinier town than Gympie, he decided that he would build his own airstrip. And so he got the slasher out and he mowed a 800-meter long airstrip. And then he thought, bugger it, I'm going to do a cross runway. And so he mowed a cross runway. And it was quite the thing in Kilkeven, you can imagine. There were only 700 people who lived there. And suddenly planes were landing. Joe Bjelke-Petersen, the Premier at the time, suddenly was able to come and land in Kilkeven to go to events at the school. And then the most amazing thing happened. We got a plane. We got a little Piper Cherokee, and it was all down to my amazing grandmother, who was Dad's mother-in-law. And we don't know, we can't remember because we don't have Mum and Dad with us anymore, but that plane became a member of our family. And so I grew up flying more than I drove. I just want to tell you a little bit about that, because what then happened on that flight, going back to Townsville in the thunderstorm, was so fundamental, not just to me, but our entire family, because the engine stalled. And I came to sort of in the back seat with the propeller just going pop, 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 and feeling the drop of the plane. And even we, you know, clearly we survived. This is what I now say to people when they tell me about their terrible plane incidents and their fear of flying. I say, did you survive? It's okay, you know? And that goes to part of what I then had to deal with in the years afterwards. But I ended up developing a terrible fear of flying. I was 24 years old, and all I wanted to do was to be a foreign correspondent. It had been my dream. Clearly, when I was 10 years old, interviewing Dad about the Moscow Olympics, I must have been thinking, I want to be a foreign correspondent. So I had to learn a lot about overcoming fear. And when people say they have a fear of flying, I'll leave out the gory details because you're still eating. But if you had said to me, you've got to get on a plane from Melbourne to Sydney, I would be physically ill for 3 days leading up to that flight, getting on a 737. I would always do it because I force myself to always turn up and be there for people. And I never not got on a plane. Although I must admit, when Pauline Hanson was campaigning for her Senate seat and had organised a 4-seater plane to Longreach from Brisbane one day, I was pretty close to bailing out of that. I thought, oh, I don't know, but I still went. Overcoming the fear of flying also gave me an incredible insight into the power of our brains and our minds. And I go into that in the book. And it enabled me to think I was almost bulletproof, because I realized that if I could overcome the greatest fear that I had had that was going to stop me following my dream, then what else might I be able to do? Well, the first thing I did was an Olympic distance triathlon, except I didn't know how to swim. So it was incredible, this feeling of empowerment. And I love talking to people about overcoming fears and what that opening up that door, what that can do for you. What people have been fascinated with the book, and thank you so much for the introduction, Robert, it's actually been long listed on the Australian Industry Book Awards for Best Memoir, alongside Helen Garner, which I'm very excited about. But it has found an audience because what I also do is open up the door to what goes on behind the scenes, behind the camera, for all of those stories that you've seen over the years. If you'd followed my work overseas, you would have known that I was one of the first reporters, one of the first foreign reporters covering the Sandy Hook school massacre, when 20 young children were killed in Connecticut. I covered presidential campaigns. I covered Guantanamo Bay. I went there twice. I went there when David Hicks had just turned up, and my bosses in Sydney said, you've got to get to Gitmo. It's this place, they've reopened, they're taking everyone there. So I managed to convince the American military to get me on a military plane to Guantanamo Bay. And it was so early on in the piece that I was walking around, going up to American Marines, asking them if they knew about an Australian who was apparently there. And this American Marine said, oh, yeah, there's a guy over there who's praying to the Quran. Apparently he's the Australian. And I'm like, oh, okay, he's the Australian. I couldn't get to him because he was inside the wire cage wearing the orange jumpsuit. But just imagine that. That was in 2002, February 2002. So just a few months after September 11. And excuse me, and I reported it back to Australia via satellite phone from Guantanamo Bay, and ended up on the front page of the Daily Telegraph in Australia and probably other newspapers as reported by the ABC, glimpses of David Hicks. It was an extraordinary situation that when I was able to then return to Guantanamo Bay and see how the place had changed and become basically a city, and that, you know, not only could you not get anywhere near the Marines, you couldn't even film them above their knees, and every frame of everything we shot had to be checked and approved by the military before we were allowed off the island. It was not until I ended up back in London, I was divorced, starting a new life, had been made the Europe bureau chief for the ABC, and I thought, Great. I had boned up on all of my knowledge about Queen Elizabeth and the royal family. I thought this is going to be a really interesting period. And one of the first things that happened was the Paris terrorist attacks. And I ended up being outside the Bataclan nightclub for days on end. I almost didn't make it. This is how new I was to the job. I'd been in America where you'd jump on planes and go from state to state and do your job. Suddenly I was in London and we race off to get to Paris. The attacks happened at 10:30 at night. The whole office is in a panic. We know up to 100 people, possibly more, are dead. All of Europe's been shut down. This is panic stations. We drive like mad people to the border to get the ferry from Dover. And as we pull up, they ask for my passport and I realize I don't have it. And the cameraman says, "Are you joking? Like you don't have your passport?" And I thought, my God, I am the new bureau chief. This is the biggest story happening in the world, and I don't even have a passport. Worse than that, I was with the delightful Phil Williams, who was our former chief foreign correspondent. He's a wonderful friend. And he looked at me and he said, "We're going to have to leave you here, Lisa." And I said, "Yeah, you do. You need to keep going. You need to keep going." So I got out of the car at the port of Dover and got taken into custody by French authorities, because if you've ever done that ferry trip, you'll know you cross over into French territory before you actually leave the coastline of England. And anyway, and everyone is on high alert. You know, there are terrorists on the loose. And here I am trying to cross borders without a passport. So it's now 3 o'clock in the morning. The biggest story is happening in the world. The bosses in Sydney are ringing me saying, "Where are you? Are you going to make the 7 p.m. news? Are you going to be there for the lead story?" And I had to confess that I was in a room. I'd been left alone. I didn't know, it was locked. The door was locked and I didn't know what was going to happen. I'm not going to tell you how that all finished because you can buy the book. But I did want to say that one of the things that came out of that was the first story. And then what happened in 2017, I ended up covering so many terrorist attacks, I lost track. I started thinking, I went to the borough markets in the morning because it's close to my home. And that night, people were stabbed and the attacks occurred there. I was in my office, the ABC office at Westminster, and the office manager looked out the window and said, "Something's going on. People are yelling, 'Bomb, bomb.'" And I said, "Quick, grab a camera." And we raced downstairs and the Westminster Bridge attack was happening. I covered the Manchester Arena attack when, again, young children were killed. It was a year that I now see as the most seminal year of my career because it pushed me to the brink of what I thought was possible personally and what I was able to then recover from. Seeing trauma up close is frightening, but also enlightening. And in my book, Daring to Fly, I take you through that process of how we deliver the news that you have seen and also how we all stay sane, most of us anyway, touch wood. Look, I do really hope that you will have a look at the book. It clearly has sold well. It's on the long list for the Industry Book Awards. I am going to be doing some signing at the end. I want to give a shout out to Jay from Mary Martin's, who's come along today, because over the last couple of years, when I was asked to write this book by Hachette and the wonderful Louise Adler, who some of you might know, wow, what a powerhouse. Yeah, she said, "You got to write a book." And I said, "Oh, no, I don't think so." And she said, "Oh, no, you're going to write a book." I realized then I had no chance of ever saying no. But Jay as so many small businesses over the last couple of years, the bookstores, it has been super tough. No one thought we'd be releasing books in the middle of a pandemic. It was easy for everyone to click on to Booktopia and Amazon and buy their books. But I just want to give a shout out to Jay, who has been so incredibly supportive to me as a new author. And I'll be there with her once we're finished. Thank you so much for listening to me today and for the invitation. Thank you.
Unashamedly commercial. Thank you, Lisa. Lisa has kindly agreed to take questions. So if you have one, please wait for the roving microphone, give your name, and we'll take it from there. Adrian, there's one over there. Thanks, Lisa.
You should see what goes on behind the scenes of ABC News Breakfast every morning. We have technical problems too. Microphone's not working. Yeah, you name it. I can hear and I'll repeat the question for others.
Book is clearly thrilling. My question for you, right this moment, with all these things that have happened in your past, why are we hearing more about the impending treaty where the World Health Organization could really take control of Australia? Why are we hearing about that now, and what's your view on it?
Oh, well, I don't have a view. I'm sorry. That's slightly off subject for what I was going to be chatting about today. Look, we do try to, we have 3 hours of live television every morning, and we do try to keep across as much as we can, you know, news-wise. But look, I'm going to take a pass on that. Clearly you're feeling very passionate about it, but it's out of my remit right at this moment.
While we're waiting on further questions, I have one for Lisa, which I actually asked her earlier, so I'm hearing it for the second time. And my question was, how on earth do you remain neutral during an election campaign when you're interviewing an array of political personalities, most of whom have egos the size of this room, but you cannot show your own personal views as you're interviewing them? How do you go about that?
Well, look, it's all that I do. I approach it in that I think, what do people out there need to know? What do I need to try and elicit from this person that is going to enable someone else to make a decision? One of the tricky things is, and this is the sort of behind the scenes of, trying to, interview politicians in particular, is that we have a set amount of time. So when I start an interview, the producer will say to me, you have to be done by 7.5 minutes past the hour. So, as soon as you start talking, you have a limited amount of time. And sometimes there are some politicians, because they know that too, and they will just talk. So they will fill the time. So I think for me, some of the frustration can be, when people say, we interrupt, or they don't like the interrupting. If we didn't interrupt, you would just have a monologue and policy document from a politician, which is not the point of the interview. But look, I think it's not just with politics, it's with whether it's the gun laws in America that I had to cover after I'd covered Sandy Hook, the shooting, whether it's whatever the topic might be, you are always going to have your own personal thoughts about it. But as a journalist, you just think, what do people out there need to know? I'm not asking the questions for me. I'm asking them for the viewer and the listener, and we just have to stick with that.
Lisa Bernie McIntosh, clearly, journalism obviously matters to you and has done for a very, very long time. Who are the journalists who inspired you along your journey?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that, because there are 3 amazing women who I was very lucky to have as mentors: Pamela Williams, who is with the Financial Review, Jennifer Hewitt with the Fin, and Marion Wilkinson, who was with the ABC for many years and in fact popped up again just this week on 7:30. But the person who really set me on my path when I was just 16, 17 was Richard Carlton. He was hosting the Carlton Walsh Report at the time. It was before he'd gone to 60 Minutes. He took time, I met him, and he took time to talk to me. And he said to me some things that I wrote down on a note at the Tilapia Park Motor Inn in Canberra. I was visiting Dad. I can tell you it was the Tilapia Park Motor Inn because I kept the note. That's how important it was. And so 35 years later, I can tell you that he said, Lisa, if you're going to be a journalist, be a good one. There's too many mediocre ones out there. Just aim high. And that was the advice. But we'd spent a couple of hours together. He'd said to me, come to the studio and have a look at the Carlton Walsh Report being done. I have benefited so much from senior mentors in my life, and I try to give back. And in fact, the Bendigo ABC office rang me just the other day to ask if I could Zoom with them just to have a chat, just to try to put a bit of pep in their step, because they were feeling the weight of 2 years of reporting as they'd been, and the attacks on the ABC that we get. You know, it can be pretty rough sometimes. I was on the tram with someone about 4 months ago, actually. And this guy, as the tram pulled up and this guy got off, he took the time to turn around and say to me, "You stink." And I thought, well, I clearly don't smell, so he's taken offence to my reporting in some way. But it's pretty amazing the kind of stuff that people feel that they can say to you. And you know, I don't have a thick skin. I think part of my reporting and why I have been successful is that I have a great deal of empathy. I feel it, and the people that I've reported on over the years, even if I was a young police reporter back in Brisbane for a tabloid newspaper. Have I got 1 minute? Oh no, I'm running out of time. Oh no, you'll have to read the book.
I'm enjoying the role of floor manager. I think we're time for one quick question from Peter.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Robert. Thank you, Lisa, for a very entertaining speech. My question is that for you as a journalist over the journey, say in the last 20 or 30 years, what have been the most significant things for you as a journalist 20 or so years ago compared to today?
Without doubt, it has been the iPhone, the smartphone. It has changed every way that we bring things to you. The way I report is still the same. The way I approach stories is still the same. But the fact that I could deliver a live cross to ABC News 24 right now with the touch of a button and go live in this room is extraordinary. When I started my career, we used to have to ring the local telecom guy to go and open up a box on a hill near Mount Isa to plug our camera in to feed the material back, and it might go to air a day later. The technology has just been extraordinary. The journalism is the same, and I am grateful for that.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Looking around the room, I can see that you have well entertained everyone who is here, and you brought alive the world of TV and radio journalism. So thank you so much. And I do encourage people to consider picking up a copy of that book on the way out. It's not the sort of Rotary thing to have a commercial included in the lunch, but why not? Lisa, thank you again, and I wish you well.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, we do give each of our Rotary speakers a little gift on the way through. An ancient book which covers the history of this club, but we still have copies to give away, so we're happy to do that. And also a pair of Rotary Centenary socks, which will keep you warm when you go to the cold of Queensland next time you're there. So I'm very happy to present these two gifts to you. One is here, one is over there. I'll give you this one here. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. This will go with the Rotary coffee cups that my brother would give me. So
Well, my thanks to everyone for attending today. In particular, my thanks to Peter Decken, MC Adrian Nelson, and our lunch setup team and the reception committee. And as usual, if you have time to stay back and help to dismantle the lunch setting, that would be greatly appreciated. And a reminder that next week, it's our annual Young Achievers Awards presentation featuring our 3 awardees. And this will be presented by the former Chief Scientist, Dr. Alan Finkel, AC. So we look forward to that, and I hope you can join us again at number 35. In the meantime, let's stand and sing the national anthem. Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are young and free, with golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing